Hello and welcome to this class in the 9th section of this Longsword course, and this is the final section. So we're going to go through some stuff that will keep you busy for quite a while. To begin with though, as usual, you should establish your base before we build on it. So what I would like you to do is to warm yourselves up, go through your 4 guards drill, make it beautiful, take an opportunity to calmly and smoothly enjoy Fiore's mechanics. Do some sword handling practice to make sure the sword is an extension of your body and not some alien thing that's trying to get away. Go through the cutting drill a couple of times, make sure that's all there. Go through first drill, second drill, the break and the exchange quite quickly just to check that it's all in place. You can go through the woman in the window drill, you can go through the 17 to 20 drill. You can, if you want, go through all of the longsword plays that Fiore shows us, the 11 plays of the sword in one hand, the 20 plays of the Zogolarg, or the 23 plays of the Zogostrator, but that will take a while. But basically just make sure that you have your base fresh in your mind, okay? Because what we're going to do when you've done that is expand on every single drill in the system. We're going to take one key drill and we're going to look at how you can use that drill to expand into lots of different directions. And then if you take that expansion process and apply it to all the drills that you know, you have literally a lifetime worth of material to practice. So, the end point of this class is not free play. Free play is something that will be introduced in this class, but it is not the end point of anything, because let me take you back to the idea of training being as a spiral. You start at the beginning knowing nothing and learning, for example, how to stand on guard. Then as you progress, eventually the weakest link in your chain is your guard. So you've come back to the beginning and you work on that, but at a higher level. And it keeps going and it keeps going. And every drill that you add gets you further up the spiral, and every layer of complexity that you add gets you further up the spiral. But then when you have a drill that has so many degrees of freedom that there isn't a set guard position to begin with, there isn't a set attacker, there isn't a set attack, there isn't a set defense, there isn't a specific action it's supposed to finish on, you just express the art and try to strike without being struck. We call that particular drill free play. But what happens during free play is eventually you get hit if your partners are any use to you. And so the free play will expose weaknesses in your base. And so you use that information to go and fix your base, and then you go back into free play to see whether that particular link in the chain is still the weakest. Okay? So free play is not the end of things. Free play is a tool we use for generating progress. And for some people, it's a necessary evil that they just have to kind of go through to find out these things. For other people, it's the whole point and the best bit about all the fencing. And it doesn't really matter whether you like it or not. It matters that you understand how it can be used to make you a better swordsman. Okay? So if the reason you took this course was so you can fence with your friends with long swords, that's fine, we will get you there. If you want to be the best possible swordsman you can be, we will get you there too. And in both of those, free play is necessary. But I don't like holding it up as this kind of the ultimate expression of the art, because it really isn't. So, go and practice your base, get your base nice and solid, and I'll see you back here when you are ready to expand. Cheerio. Welcome back. Now, we're going to start by taking a simple drill that you know well, and we're going to add a step. That's it. So, you've already looked into adding a step at the beginning of a drill when we looked at who moves first and entering into measure safely. We're now going to add a step at the end of the drill. In other words, we're going to take any drill that you know, and let's start with first drill, why not? And we're going to look at what the person who loses at the end of the drill in its basic form could be doing. Because of course, every technique has a counter. So, Now then, so let's start with first drill, and we'll do it step by step, just because. So step 1, I strike. Step 2, she parries and strikes. Step 3, I enter with a pommel strike. Step 4, she counters that. Now, let's just wind that back a second. What should I be doing now? I should be admiring Zoe's beautifully engraved pommel and going, oh, that'll look great in my face. No. Well, possibly something like this might do it. Okay, so run through to the end of the drill. You can use this drill if you want, and see what you would do to counter the last action of the drill. And here's a tip. If you don't know how to counter the last action of the drill, the answer will be found somewhere in Fiore's book. Okay? So, or possibly even one of my books, who knows. So, go to the end of the drill, find the solution to the end of it, so that the length of the drill, which arbitrarily stops at 4 actions, most of our drills, just add the 5th. Okay? You can pick first drill if you want, but pick any drill in the system if you like. So I'll see you back here in a minute. Cheerio. Welcome back. Now, we're going to take the idea of adding actions at the beginning and the end of a basic drill, and we're going to let it devolve into sparring. Okay? But Zoe and I are going to do this just with masks, and we're going to go very slowly. Now, the trick is, without speeding up, get your partner to want to speed up. Okay? So you'll push them just enough that they will, feel that they have to rush to kind of counter something. And when that happens, victory is yours. Okay? Don't rush. I will stick my hat on for this so that Zoe can poke me in the face without worrying about it. And we're going to be going very slowly. We'll start out of measure, and we'll come into measure, and we'll see how it goes from there. Are you ready? So, we start out of measure. We come towards each other gently, moving slowly. And we end up here. That was terrible, because I let you hit me. Let's try that again, shall we? Yeah. Okay, now. What?
Do we have a plan or some kind of idea of
Let's do first drill.
Yeah, that's what I mean, yeah, okay.
Let's do first drill.
Yeah.
Let's see how it goes.
Yeah.
Okay? So, let's do first drill and I'll attack.
Yes.
Okay?
So I can be a little more defensive, or should I come into measure? Yes,
Yeah, you can come into measure, but you're looking for my attack because you want to do a parry and strike.
Yeah.
Okay? So. Speed it up a little bit. Yeah. Now, as you probably noticed, we speed it up a little bit. This is natural and normal, but it is exactly what the drill is there to find out. Can you see where things are going enough that you can manipulate your partner gently into a place where they can't strike from? So, let's try again. And you see how we're going slowly and gently. Even at these speeds though, if you put your fingers in the way of a strike, you are going to get hurt. So I don't think you should put gauntlets on for this. I think you should go slowly and remain careful. Now, if you find that you're spontaneously producing a whole load of crap, when you find that you're producing crap, which is the normal state of training when you're actually pushing your envelope a little bit, the thing to do is reintroduce the familiar. Go back to something more familiar. So what we're going to do is start with first drill, slightly looser form of first drill where maybe Zoe will step into measure and I'll attack into her opening that way. And we'll go very slowly and gently. And our objective is to produce first drill, but without any set end to the drill. And we just see where it takes us and see how quickly it devolves into crap from there. So, let's have a look. That didn't go too badly, okay? Because we knew what we were doing. Okay, let's try that again. And you see how by changing my response to her first action, it immediately took us out of first drill, and we ended up, oh, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Now, the nature of this drill is I can't give you specific instructions as to what to do. What I can do is give you general principles upon which you should train. So what you should do, set up a drill that you know, leave it open-ended, relax the beginning a little bit with the who moves first drill, and stay slow, and the moment you feel you need to speed up, that's when you stop, okay? Or when a technique is completed and maybe there's a blade slicing a mask or somebody is wrapped up, something like that, but keep the whole thing really gentle, okay? Because you're not wearing any equipment, and therefore your fingers are vulnerable, your ribs are vulnerable, and so on. The idea is not to generate a stress response in your partner. The idea is to play with the stuff you already have in a relaxed and friendly manner, okay? This is slow-mo sparring. Enjoy it. Go gently. Cheerio. Okay, welcome back from your slow-mo sparring adventure. Now, what we're doing is introducing layers of complexity, and the way we do that is by introducing what we call degrees of freedom. Now, any drill where the choreography is set from beginning to end has no degrees of freedom. So that teaches you the ground of the art, the techniques and the basic tactical preferences of the art, but it doesn't actually teach you how to fence at all, okay? It teaches you, if you like, to respond by rote to specific questions, but not to understand the language that you're speaking. So, the primary tool for introducing complexity is adding degrees of freedom. And as soon as you do that, it's really important that you're clear about the roles that you and your partner are occupying. Now, the way we control this is through a system called the rule of C's, which is basically cooperate, coach, compete, okay? Now, the first layer of the drill is you cooperate in creating correct choreography, okay? So, for example, Zoe and I are going to set up a choreographical drill that has a variation in it, okay? It's going to be first drill, Zoe's going to attack, and I will either parry and strike, or I will counterattack. So parry and strike as in the basic form of the drill, counterattack as in the beginning of the strata form of the drill, okay? We'll start with that. And this is cooperative, choreographical, and there is no variations, no changes. Okay. All right, Zoe, you come and strike. So as Zoe comes to strike, I will parry and strike. As Zoe comes to strike, I will counterattack. Okay? And then we play it the other way. You've done this many times. So I want you to set that up in an absolutely predictable way. Parry, counterattack, parry, counterattack, parry, counterattack. Don't fiddle with it. Just make sure both of you know the choreography that you're going to be playing with. Okay? I'll see you in a minute. Cheerio. And welcome back. Now, in this drill, we change it so that Zoe counters my parry with, how would you like to counter my parry?
Well, why not do first drill with pommel strike?
First drill with a pommel strike, no problem. Okay? Or she parries my counterattack. How would you like to do that?
Well, we could try the strata form.
we could indeed, okay? At this stage, it's not a good idea to get too imaginative, right? Best stick to the stuff that you know so that we keep complexity to a minimum. So if I parry, she's going to enter with a pommel strike. If I counterattack, she's going to parry it and strike. Okay, and this is still, incidentally, cooperative. We're establishing that she knows the proper counters. So, yeah, she's done that before. Cool. Okay, so set that up and make sure you both know what you're doing. Okay, so play it in both directions and alternate between one and the other in a consistent way. You're not trying to catch them out. Okay, go do this. I'll see you in a minute. Cheerio. Welcome back. Now, okay, get my sinuses sorted out. Excuse me 1 moment. Yuck. Okay, welcome back. Now, using that same drill, I'm going to vary the ordering of my defenses so that Zoe has to recognize the situation that she's finding herself in. So I'm going to sometimes parry, sometimes counterattack, and my objective is not to spoon feed it to her so she gets it every time. And my objective is not just to demolish her with my amazing superior technique or any of that crap. My objective is to improve her ability to recognize what I'm doing. So I do that by keeping it sufficiently difficult that she gets it right about 8 times out of 10. 9 times out of 10, I should up the difficulty. 7 times out of 10, I should probably ease off a little bit. And the primary means I have of making it more or less difficult is in the timing of when I move. If I start parrying really early, she'll see it really early. But if I counterattack, for example, quite late, it's harder for her to see. Okay? I can also increase my speed a little bit if she needs that bit of extra pressure to put her into a better learning environment. But my job here, I define my success by her success. So I'm doing my job properly if she is getting better. Let's have a look. So, okay. See how already, because it was unexpected, the technique she had no trouble with before is now more difficult. Excellent, we're on to something. There we go. Good. Okay. I think you get the idea. Okay? So we've introduced 1 degree of freedom, and we're using that degree of freedom as a coaching tool to improve our partner's ability to execute the art. Okay? This is a rather advanced kind of training because the person who is creating the changes, the coach in this setup, has to be completely in control of the pressure being applied. Okay? So this is not easy, so if it doesn't go terribly well to begin with, don't worry about it. If you're finding that it's particularly difficult, you might want to choose perhaps a simpler degree of freedom to change. Okay? And I will leave it up to your experience and imagination to figure out something. Because of course, you can apply this to absolutely every situation in which a choice is possible. So for example, Zoe's attack could be a real attack or it could be a feint to strike on the other side. Okay? Or when I parry, I could strike, or I can parry and lead her into the punta falsa. Or I could parry and strike to get the pommel strike onto my prepared counter to it. So in first draw, it's this one. The breadth of possibility of training opportunities is endless. Your objective is to introduce the complexity to increase the level of difficulty just to the point where your partner is definitely improving. Okay? So be patient and go have some fun with that. Cheerio. Welcome back. Now, the rule of C's, choreography, coach, compete, or cooperate, coach, compete. And having cooperated in creating the drill, and now having coached each other in the drill, you should now compete in the drill. This is where adding a bit of extra equipment is probably a good idea, because mistakes can happen. But in this form of the drill, your objective is not to train your partner, your objective is to fool them and hit them, okay? And it's a very, very specific mindset and a very specific training environment, and you should use it for the purposes of finding error. Error in yourself when they overcome you in one way or another, error in your partner when you successfully expose a weakness by out-competing them. Okay. There's not a lot of sense showing you this because it doesn't look like anything. It just looks like somebody hitting somebody else. So what I want you to do is set up the same drill, and now the only real difference is in the mindset of the people practicing it. You are not trying to coach your partner. You are both simply trying to get this drill to work for you. Okay? And when you come back, I will show you a couple of tricks for manipulating this specific situation. Cheerio. Welcome back. Now, in any situation, it's a good idea if you can predict what's about to happen. And indeed, one of Fiore's 4 virtues is avvisamento, foresight, okay, which is the ability to see what's about to happen. Now, one of the things you can do when you get better at the specific, precise mechanics of the art is to manipulate what your partner sees to lead them down one path or another. And sticking with this first drill example, I can show you how, by manipulating the attack very slightly, you can force the defender into a parry or invite a counterattack. Okay? And as with everything, I'm going to start by showing it to you ridiculously big and then bring it down to the size it would actually be when you were using it. And you can then go away and play with this and see how it works for you. So I'll use my mask for this, obviously, so that Zoe can counterattack without worrying about it. Now, we'll use this line on the ground because this is all about precisely controlling direction. Okay? So Zoe waits there into the Porta di Ferro, and when I come and strike, she's either going to parry and strike or counterattack. And if I attack directly up this line, she can do either. Yep. You see? No problem. Now, if I attack over here, what are you going to do? You would, wouldn't you? Okay? But if I attack over here, you can't do that. Okay? So, by the way that I come up the line, if I am crossing the line, she cannot counterattack. Okay? She can parry, but she cannot counterattack. Okay? If I am to one side of the line, I am leaving this opening for her to counterattack into. Okay? Now, here's the thing. It should be so that if she does what I want, she falls onto my prepared response. If she does the wrong thing, her action fails anyway. That's what I want. Because, let's face it, if I only had a 50-50 chance of winning a sword fight, I probably wouldn't want to go and do one. I want to have a 100% chance of winning a sword fight, which means all roads should lead to my victory. Okay? So, if I leave the space for a counterattack and she does it, yeah, my parry and entry is easy because I've invited it, I'm expecting it, I can see it, I control it. Okay? If I close the line of the counterattack, but she counterattacks anyway, yeah, it just simply fails because the line is closed. Okay? So if she does what I want, I hit her. If she does what she's not supposed to do, the line is closed and I hit her. Okay? If I strike so that she must parry, I better have my response prepared. Okay? But if I strike leaving a space for a counterattack that doesn't come, she parries anyway, that parry is so much bigger than it would normally have to be that my countering it should be really, really easy. Okay? And all of this is done. I'll show it to you from the front. Thank you, Zoe. All of this is done to begin with. Really big and obvious. Please stab me in the face. Oh, there you go. Or you have no hope of that counterattack. Okay? And then with a bit of practice and experience playing with this against various opponents, right, you make it a lot more subtle. There was an opening for a counterattack. I'm very slightly off the line. I would normally be here, and now I'm here. Okay? And I'm letting my sword trail just a little bit. It would normally be there. Okay? Or I close off that line, but maybe she thinks she can maybe pop a counterattack in there. No way. Because I'm just slightly over the line, my toes you can see are pointing slightly that way, and I get to close off that line so that any counterattack coming into it would fail. Okay? So, the trick to this sort of thing is you start so big and obvious that you can't really make a mistake. And then take that and just bring it gently, gently, gently into a level of precision which allows you to manipulate what your partner is seeing at a level where they're probably not fully conscious that you're doing it. Okay? So, this allows you to direct your opponent into a particular response against which you have a prepared response, and it allows you to close off their other responses so that they only really have one thing they can do that might work, and you have a counter prepared for it. Okay? This is a good general thing to practice, but you need specific examples. This is the easiest one, and once you've absorbed this, I expect you to go back through the syllabus and have a look at all the other places where you can manipulate your partner into doing the thing you want them to do. Okay? This can be done cooperatively to start with, just to make sure the choreography is right. You can then use your responses to coach the person. So you might, for example, only shoot that counterattack in if you think it's actually going to land. Okay? And then, of course, this sort of thing is actually perhaps best expressed at the competitive level of performing a drill. Okay? So apply the rule of C's to this. Okay, that should keep you busy for a little bit, and I'll see you back here when you're ready. Cheerio. Now, once you have established the idea of degrees of freedom, you can play with them with slow-mo sparring. Now, slow-mo sparring is not competitive sparring. What it is, it's a gentle game in which you get to play with the things that you know. Now, it is a good idea not to introduce too many degrees of freedom too soon. So you could, for example, start with first drill or any drill that you know, and then see how it develops from there. Make the drill open-ended. And perhaps the most important thing is when it ends because somebody has been hit, then you replay the last few steps of the hit, and the person who got hit figures out what they should have done to stop themselves being hit. So, shall we play? Okay, so now that we gently went through and we found that Zoe is vulnerable to that particular counter, how should you have countered that? Let's set it up. We can't set it up from the absolute beginning because we remember it, but you might want to set it up just from the moment before. The moment before was she's coming in with a pommel strike here, and I turned, pushed the elbow, stepped out of the way, and got my point in. So, come this way. Come into shot. Okay. So, the question is, what should Zoe be doing about this? Okay. And I'm just going to keep doing it nice and slowly while she thinks about it. And at some point, she's going to come up with a counter to it. Okay, do that a couple of times. There we go. Let's see if I can get my hand in the elbow. Oh, there we go. Very nice. Okay, so you can choose to practice that a few times if you wish, or you can just go straight back into the slow-mo and see if that same situation arises, and if it does, see whether that rather tasty counter pops out. Okay? So, that's probably given you enough to start with at least, so go and practice that for a little bit and come back in when you're ready and we will continue. Cheerio. So, it's important in your slow-mo sparring that you don't continually repeat the same things over and over and over. So, if you're using the basic drills as a kind of guide through the system, you can deliberately try to express the various different drills in various different ways. So, now I'm going to choose to wait, and Zoe is going to enter, and we're going to see where it goes from there. And see if you can guess which drill we're playing with. Okay, what happened there? What happened was, here I am in Denti Shingyaro. Zoe came to strike with a reversal. I parried it, but it was a feint. I parried the feint as she entered, yeah, and she ended up getting hit. Okay, now, there's several ways she could avoid getting hit in that situation. What's the first?
Do a better feint.
Okay, what could be better about the feint?
It could be less noticeable.
Okay, firstly you could fool me with the feint, yes, but if you complete your blade actions before you step, you'll end up in a completely different situation. Let's have a look at that. So, as I come to parry, and I catch your feint, no, complete your blade actions before you step. Okay, so get around onto the other side, so if I parry it, you're still far away. Okay, so now, at this point, you have plenty of time to deal with my strike, for example. Okay, or go ahead and step in with your continuation. Okay, now from here, what can you do about this? For example, okay? And the thing is, because you're going slowly, it's easy to see what's happening, so it's easy to see what you could have done if you'd only thought about it in time. Okay, so you can incorporate this kind of slow-mo sparring regularly in your practice sessions so that you have a nice, friendly place to go to just generate errors which are useful to fix. Okay, so go and play with that and vary the techniques and the actions that you're doing so you get some of the breadth of the system expressed. Okay, I'll see you in a minute. Cheerio. One of the critical skills in making any kind of training useful is your fencing memory. Here's the thing, if you cannot remember what happened when you got hit, you cannot reproduce it. If you cannot reproduce it, you cannot train to fix it. So, we have, of course, drills for improving your fencing memory. It is easiest to do this with a third person, but actually best to do this with a video camera. So what you do is you set up your slow-mo sparring, and when a hit arrives, okay, you describe in precise fencing terms exactly what just happened. So in the previous exercise, I waited in Dente di Cinghiaro. Zoe threw a feint of a reverso, which I parried. She disengaged against it, entered with a thrust. I closed the line and I hit her. That's what happened, okay? And of course, I'll go back and check the video, and if I've got that wrong, I shall hide my head in shame, because fencing memory is a critical fencing skill. So what you do is set up a slow-mo sparring thing so that something that you don't know is about to happen happens, and then recreate in exact fencing language, be as precise as you can, exactly what happened. And the trick is work back from the strike. So we would work back from here. Okay, we're here. How did we get here? Well, there was a thrust coming towards my face and I parried it. What happened right before that thrust? Well, actually there was some kind of strike on the other side. And she must have disengaged against it. Right, there it is. Okay. Now, what was happening right before that? I'm parrying this way. So I must have started on my left. Oh yes, I was in Dente di Cinghiaro. So you work backwards. And in a perfect world, you, your partner, and your third person who is watching will all agree on exactly what happened. Very rare. That's why the video camera comes in handy. So set up slow-mo sparring for the purposes of establishing your fencing memory or developing your fencing memory. And if you have an external reference point, you'll probably do much better than if you're just trying to do it from each other's memory, because there's no way of checking who's right if you disagree. And funnily enough, often people will agree on something and still be completely wrong. So set up in threes if possible with a video camera if you don't have a third person training with you. Set up slow-mo sparring for the purposes of establishing a non-choreographed strike so that you can reconstruct that strike from your memory and be as precise as possible. Okay, go practice that for a little while and I'll see you back here in a bit. Cheerio. Now then, let's have a look at fixing a common technical error, which is striking in such a way that you expose your hands. Now, to do this particular exercise, your partner needs to have something on their hands that allows them to be hit. Now, you know my feelings on plastic gauntlets, but it's Zoe's hands, and she's happy wearing those, so let's see how it goes. Now, the reason your hands get hit is because they are exposed. If the hands are not exposed, they won't get hit. Let me just illustrate that with me fiddling about with my technique, and then I will start to train Zoe in the process of not getting hit on the hands. Let's have a look. So, let's say Zoe is waiting in a guard on her right-hand side, just to make things simple, okay? Be gentle with my poor fingers. Now, if my hands are exposed as I strike, she can plausibly strike them. And I would step out of the way while you did that if I was you. Okay? Yep. So, if my hands are exposed as I attack, she can plausibly strike them. Okay? So I have two ways of protecting my hands. I can either deliberately expose them to get her sword out where I can control it so I can strike, or I can keep my sword in front of my hands. There is no opportunity to strike the hands, they are not vulnerable. Now, there are some people who they're so obsessed with striking at your hands that they'll do all kinds of funny angulaty shit to get around them. Don't worry about that. It's not normal behavior in a sword fight with actual sharp swords. But also, so let's say she really angulates to get that strike on my hands, okay? So even if my hands are not really exposed, the thing is, if I'm here and she does that angulation, parrying it should be easy, okay? So the thing is, you have to be aware that people will do it. You have to set it up so that doing it doesn't make sense, and if they do it, counter, or draw the action onto your hands. Okay. That gets into tactical territory. Let's just simply have a look, though, at the technique of how to strike without exposing your hands to undue risk. And all that's going to happen is Zoe is going to strike at my head. I am going to stand and wait. And every time she strikes at my head, I'm going to snap at her hands. Okay? Did I hit your hands? No. Really?
Oh, you hit my thumb.
Right. Aim at my head. Okay. Is it getting any better?
Still got my finger.
Let's see. There we go. Now, notice how she's changing her attack to eliminate the threat to the hands. And this is, incidentally, the absolute best way of training pretty much anything. You set it up so that the problem occurs, and if you have a clear idea of success, hit without being hit, and failure, get hit, regardless of whether you hit or not, then very quickly you will start to change what you're doing to get to the success state. Okay? So again, I haven't given her any technical instruction as to how to change the way she's holding the sword or the way she's striking or any of that sort of stuff. But now it's much more difficult for me to get at her hands simply because I'm going for it all the time. She knows that's going to happen, and so she defends her hands on the way in. Okay? So that's the first level of it. The way you could set this up for practice, I would suggest gauntlets on both of your pairs of hands, because when we get into this sort of territory, if I'm doing a foolish snipe at the hands, my hands are also exposed. Okay? So you probably want to have gauntlets on when you do this. If you don't have gauntlets, you can't do this exercise. Am I clear? You can only strike at targets that have protection. Okay? But you can set this up and see what changes to your technique you make when you know that strike to the hands is likely to come. Okay? And once you are comfortable entering without getting hit on the hands, then of course you play with it. Maybe you draw the hit to the hands, see if they go for it, parry it and strike. Protect against it, see if they go for it anyway, close the line and strike. Go away and play with this, see how it goes, and be very careful of your fingers, of course. Only do this with proper protection. And if you run into any trouble, video it, pop it online where I can find it, drop me an email to let me know that it's there, and I'll see what I can do. Cheerio. So, well done for getting this far. This is a long course with lots of material in it, and it should keep you busy for, I suspect, several years to come. But I hope that the process has been absolutely clear. Now, I would suggest that in every session, you should go through the following things. Do a complete warm-up. Make sure you know how your body is moving, how it's feeling. Your body is most of the sword-swordsman combination. This is less than 2 kilos, this is about 75 kilos. So by mass at least, this is about 2%, okay? So make sure this is in order and moving nicely. Always make sure in every session that you are comfortable with the sword and how it moves, and give yourself some time to play with the weapon and get it yours, okay? Always, in every session, do some specific technical training to make sure the actions that you're practicing are within the system that you're trying to master, okay? So give yourself some very Fiorian moments in every session so that you are reminded of the language you're trying to speak in its most grammatically perfect form, with its most perfect accent you can manage. Okay. Then, in every session, you should probably go through at least a couple of basic drills, probably not in its most basic form at this stage, but you want to just make sure that all the pieces are in their proper shape. And this, once you know what you're doing, this whole thing I've just been talking about will take about 15 minutes out of your session. But what it does is it gets you into the proper state of mind and the proper way of being to actually work on your swordsmanship. So, think of it as a kind of whole warm-up. Now, what we normally do at this stage of training, when you basically know the system, is we hunt for the weakest link. So we set up a diagnostic, run the diagnostic. That could be free play, that could be running through the drills that you know. you should know how to do this by now. Find the weakest link. Whatever it is, find the weakest link. Analyze it. Come up with a plan for strengthening that weakest link. And then execute your plan and see how it goes. Okay? Once you have worked on strengthening that weakest link for a little while, run the same diagnostic again and see if it is still the weakest link. Here are the possibilities. If it is no longer the weakest link, you run the same diagnostic or a different one until you find the next weakest link and apply the process again. Or it is still the weakest link, but it's not as bad as it was, which means your training approach to fixing it is working. So you should go back and do more of the same kind of training to repair or improve that weakest link. Or it could be still the weakest link and it hasn't really improved, in which case you need to change your approach to fixing the weakest link, okay, no matter what that is. And this approach is true for whatever skill you're trying to master. Run a diagnostic, find the weakest link, work on fixing the weakest link, run the diagnostic again, and when you run the diagnostic again, you will get the information that tells you whether it's still the weakest link, whether the weakest link is stronger but still the weakest, or whether it hasn't improved, in which case you need to change your training approach. Okay? And this is a process that you will run in every single training session you do from now on. And you can run this at every stage of the training session. So when you run your warm-up, let's say you decide that your lower back is weaker than it should be. So that's your physical weakest link. Okay, what are you going to do to strengthen it? Okay, come up with the plan. Okay, apply the plan. Run the diagnostic, see if it's still the weakest link. If it is, keep working on it. If it isn't, train something else. So this gives you a continuous cycle of improvement, but it requires discipline and focus and all of that sort of hard stuff. So I would also recommend in every session there should be at least a little bit of not messing about exactly, but having fun with what you're doing. If you get all the way through, should we say, a 2-hour training session and none of it was fun, you are probably doing something wrong, okay? Because the point of this is when you pick up a sword, you just glow with it, and it's delicious and it's lovely, and this is why we do it. So make sure you get at least some of that in every session. And that could be having a bit of bish bash bosh with your friends, or that could be the thing that maybe you really love the most is doing something like the cutting drill, where you can really go for it because there's nobody standing in your way and there's nobody messing it up for you. You can just express the art beautifully, and whatever floats your boat, whatever bit of the training you like best, make sure there's some of that in every session. So you look forward to every session, and at the end of every session you can look back and see clear improvement and yes, that was fun. Now, usually, those are two separate things. The process of improvement is often not very fun at all. Having improved feels great. So it's also a good idea, as I've been telling you since the beginning of the course, video the stuff that you're doing, okay? And if you get stuck, send it to me. Yes, but also have a look back at the videos that you shot at the beginning of the course and compare them with the videos you shot at the end of the course of yourself doing these things. And look at the difference. Look at how you have gone from probably clumsy beginner to graceful expert. And you should take pleasure and pride in that accomplishment because it is entirely yours. I can show you what to do and I can advise you of what you should do, but it's you that actually does it and you that actually generates the improvement. So, I hope you found this course useful and interesting. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I look forward to hearing about your experiences on the course at any time. So, thanks for coming. It's been a pleasure, and I hope to see you again soon. Cheerio.